Sambuli Vanaki te whānau. He mātangara puara, ko Nell tōku ingoa. If you haven't already seen our other videos on how to write job applications, find jobs and succeed at job interviews, you might like to watch those first. If you've already seen them, hoki mai anō and thanks for coming back. In this video, I'm going to explain what psychometric tests and assessment centres are, why they exist, and what employers hope to gain by using them. We'll have a look at some of the different types of tests and exercises you can expect, as well as whether or not they work, and I'll talk through some strategies you can adopt to give yourself the best chance at doing well in them. Psychometric tests can either be administered as part of the general recruitment process, or they can be part of an assessment centre. An assessment centre is a selection tool for recruiting, but can also be used for promotion or further training. Surveys suggest that 70% of large organisations and 40% of smaller ones are using assessment centres for graduate recruitment. They are events where candidates are gathered together to complete a series of exercises and activities which simulate the type of work that needs to be done in the advertised role. You'll be measured against the key criteria and competencies that they've already outlined in the job ad and the position description. So by the time you reach the assessment centre, you should have a good idea of what they're looking for, and it's almost certain that you've already demonstrated those characteristics. So if teamwork is one of their key criteria, and you've been able to explain a time where you successfully demonstrated that skill, then at the assessment centre, they'll be observing what your teamwork skills look like in practice from their own perspective, rather than relying on your perception and description of your teamwork skills. There'll usually be a couple of trained assessors present to facilitate and monitor activities. They'll be observing and recording what they see and hear. Assessment centres are expensive, so if you've made it to this part of the recruitment process, you're one of their preferred candidates. You should feel proud of that success and let that momentum give you confidence going into the activities. Your invitation should provide the basic information such as venue, program and timeframes. Assessment centres will differ from one employer to the next depending on the criteria that the employer is wanting to assess. They can take anything from a few hours right through to a whole weekend. It could be based either at their premises or it could be at a university or function centre central to where they're doing their recruiting. Typically, there'll be between 6 and 12 people present, depending on the size of the organisation and the number of recruits they're looking for. The schedule is often tightly packed and can be pretty demanding with very little downtime. You could be quite tired by the end of it, even if it's just a few hours, because you're being observed and assessed from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave, including any after-event drinks or casual chat over lunch and afternoon tea. They'll be observing how you interact with people in those different contexts. They may even ask the receptionist if anyone stood out when they arrived. So be friendly, introduce yourself, and find out what room you should be going to and where the bathrooms are. This will help you become comfortable in the unfamiliar environment, which contributes to making you feel calm and composed. SHL is one of the big companies that provide psychometric testing and run assessment centres all over the world. They say, if you want to see where someone's strengths and limitations lie, put them into typical situations and watch them. SHL suggests that an assessment centre gives a more accurate profile of an individual's abilities, knowledge and personality. The aim is to obtain the best possible indication of your potential to do the job well. So the more practical and relevant the tests are, the better indication they'll get of your strengths and limitations. The assessment centre could be made up of some or all of these things. There are things that are most likely to occur in most assessment centres, like group exercises, some form of presentation, a group or individual interview, some psychometric or personality tests. You may also get other things like a case study, role play, in-tray exercise or fact-finding exercise. Group exercises might take the form of a group presentation, case study, or it might even be a seemingly random kind of game. You might be given a pack of cards and asked to build a card tower. Maybe you'll earn 10 points for every layer of your tower and lose a point for each card left over at the end. There could be a twist, like half the team have the cards and are blindfolded, while the other half of the team gives instructions. They're looking at how you interact in a group. What do you bring to the group that will add value to the quality of the outcome? They're potentially looking at your interpersonal and communication skills, your ability to cope under pressure, your strategic thinking and planning ability, whether you can express new ideas, and how motivated you are to achieve the result. A lot of people think that when they do a group activity, they have to take charge of the group to show that they can be a leader. But there are lots of different roles that you could take on within the group to help you shine. It might be as the leader, if that's your personality, or it might be that you're the person that encourages the quieter people to share their ideas so that everybody's heard. You might be the timekeeper who reminds your teammates you've only been given 15 minutes for the activity, which allows 5 minutes for planning, 5 minutes for doing it, and 5 minutes for emergencies and checking. You might point out that 7 minutes have gone by and you still haven't started. You could be the person who can think outside the box and come up with an alternative solution. Maybe you'll notice that the other teams are frantically trying to build the highest tower, but it keeps collapsing, so you suggest that your team just uses all of the cards in one layer to win. So don't feel that you have to take on a role that you're not comfortable with. Find a role that works for you and enables you to make a contribution to the group. You might have to take turns at being the leader, so consider what your leadership style might be and play to that strength. To do well in group exercises, get involved and contribute as much as you can to help the group get the task done. Remember that quality might beat quantity, and be prepared to think outside the square. Be assertive rather than passive or aggressive in your approach, and encourage the quieter candidates to contribute and discourage any one individual from taking complete control. Be organised and realistic so that your group can get as close as possible to completing the task on time. You might be asked to give some sort of presentation. It'll probably be relevant to the role, the company, and the industry. They might not be as interested in the content, but rather in how you present your information. Whether it's factually correct or exactly what they want to hear tends to be secondary as long as it's not really off the wall. They're looking at how you prepare, structure, and present, how you engage the audience, and how you come across throughout that process. Sometimes it might be a presentation of the group exercise, and you might deliver that either individually or as a group. So again, there are various ways in which you might be asked to perform. You might be given the topic in advance, so you have some time to prepare for it. Other times they might give you 10 minutes notice. Naturally, that can raise the stress and anxiety levels, but everybody's in the same situation. So the important thing is how you manage that stress and anxiety to complete what has been asked of you. If you are given advanced warning, find out what the rules are so you can play to them. You might be restricted from using a PowerPoint presentation, but handouts or flip charts might be allowed. To deliver a strong presentation, organise a good structure, know the information, and communicate it well by speaking clearly at a good pace and volume, and vary your tone. Be aware of your body language. Use gestures, smile, and make eye contact. Use visual aids or props like a handout, flip chart, PowerPoint presentation, or even a coin if it'll help you express your point. Keep calm to show your confidence even under pressure, and let your personality show by including drawings, cartoons, and maybe even some humour. Stick to the time limit, summarise the main points at the end before inviting questions. Be prepared to back up your logic and thank the audience for their attention. With an in-tray exercise, you'll be given a bunch of items that you might need to deal with in a typical day. This could be emails, phone messages, spreadsheets to update, meeting minutes, or reports. You'll be required to sort those items in order of priority. It's designed to test your ability to absorb a large amount of information quickly, to prioritise that information, and make decisions based on it. What's important is not necessarily having the right answer, but being able to articulate the reasoning behind the approach. Some employers will introduce new information partway through your in-tray exercise. They'll usually explain that some things have been resolved and new items have popped up with varying degrees of urgency. Now they'll ask you to prioritise your new set of tasks, and they might give you less time to complete this. Again, you might find your stress and anxiety levels rising, so take some deep breaths. Keep calm and remember it's about showing how well you can perform under pressure. If the role you've applied for is in a high-pressure environment, they'll be trying to simulate that as much as they can. So even though it's uncomfortable, they're not trying to make you feel awkward or inferior, they're just trying to observe you in as real-world a scenario as they can. There are two parts to an in-tray exercise: the actual exercise and the follow-up discussion where you explain the reasoning behind your approach. You probably will have already had an interview, but there could be another interview as part of the assessment centre. Usually it'll just be you in a room with a panel, but sometimes it might be a group interview. The first interview might have focused on your personality and how you're going to fit with their team, their organisation and their culture. So this second interview could be more technically focused to see what you've learned from your degree and whether you know how you could be applying that in practical ways. They might also ask about any of the assessments they've put you through so far during the assessment centre, or areas of concern that they might have picked up on. So as you go through the activities, take time to reflect on what's going well and perhaps what isn't. Often after an interview, you find yourself thinking of better examples you could have given or better wording you could have used. Embrace those thoughts as a learning opportunity to consider what you might do differently. You'll be better prepared next time, or if they ask you about those things in your second interview. As with any interview, be prepared by doing some practice so that you can perform at your best on the day. You can learn more about this in our video on job interviews, which you can access with the link in the description below. Psychometric tests are tools that evaluate your psychological functions, things like your intelligence, your ability, personality, interests and values. There'll be some strict time limits, particularly for aptitude and ability tests, and the results are marked objectively and analysed to produce a score or profile that places you on a scale so they can get a sense of where you fit for that job. Some employers might not conduct an assessment centre. They might prefer to rely solely on a first and second interview and some psychometric tests. Employers use psychometric tests because they're seen as being objective, scientific and fair, so they can prove their decision was based on a robust process derived from research which shows how effective it is. They can also be enormously helpful to reduce large numbers of applications to more manageable amounts. So some employers will use psychometric tests quite early in the process to make life easier for them and their HR team. There are two main groups or types of tests. The first group of tests are called aptitude, ability or intelligence tests. These indicate how well you do things. The second group are called personality tests, questionnaires or inventories, which are designed to find out who you are and whether you're the kind of person who'd be a good fit for that type of role and environment. These two types of tests are quite different. Ability tests are designed to measure the maximum performance that you're capable of. You're almost guaranteed to encounter verbal reasoning and numerical reasoning, and then you might get some additional tests such as abstract reasoning, technical reasoning, or spatial reasoning. You're usually given one or two examples. Answers are right or wrong, and there is a time constraint. Usually that time constraint is designed to put you under pressure, and these tests are designed to be almost impossible to finish. So don't worry if you haven't gotten through all of the questions. Sometimes the questions will start easy and get harder, and other times they'll start harder and get easier. So find out if you can skip questions and come back to them, or if you're required to complete them in order. Ask if they're negatively scored, so if you get an answer wrong, do you lose marks? If not, then you can afford to risk guessing on the questions that you find particularly hard. To do well in ability tests, make sure you read the instructions carefully. Keep an eye on the time and don't get too caught up on one problem. Move on to the next one if you're really stuck. If the test is not negatively scored, then take a best guess. You might guess the right answer and give yourself a better score. Some tests apply a guessing correction, so you might as well give yourself that buffer if you can. The best thing you can do to give yourself the highest possible chance of success with ability tests is to practice. Personality tests are a bit different. They're designed to figure out how you would typically behave in certain situations. They're analysing your personality, what motivates you, your values, your attitudes, and your interests to determine what makes you a good fit for the job and the organisation. Personality tests are not concerned with your abilities, but how you see yourself and the way you relate to others, your approach to problems, and how you deal with feelings and emotions. You can practice some of these using the link in the description below. They normally come in one of two formats. You're either asked to rate yourself or are asked to choose between different statements which look at different aspects of personality. The choice-based questions are not usually clear-cut, so you might like both options that are presented, but the test is looking for patterns in your preferences. Rating statements are a bit more straightforward. You can choose an option between strongly agree to strongly disagree. There's no right or wrong answer here, just what's best for you. Go with your first instinct and ignore the urge to overanalyse the options. Personality tests are not usually timed, but try not to spend too long answering any one question. Your first instinctive response is generally the most accurate. Some people can be tempted to try and portray what they think would be the ideal candidate for the role, but these tests often include some analysis that looks at consistency in your answers. So you might be asked similar questions in slightly different ways throughout the test. The questionnaire will generate a profile that the employer can compare against the profile of the ideal person and other members of the team to see how you'll fit in. The best preparation for personality questionnaires is a good night's sleep and positive thoughts about yourself. Know yourself in the job so that you can answer in the appropriate context. Be honest and trust your first impressions. So do they actually work? Looking at your degree alone gets it right about 10% of the time. Bringing in your biographical data, such as your education, work and life experience, it's about 30% accurate in predicting a successful candidate. Ability tests and job samples get the accuracy of prediction up to 45%. If I were to flip a coin, my chances of choosing the right person are 50%. So all of these are less accurate predictors of a successful candidate than flipping a coin. It's not until you get to assessment centres that we start to get the most useful prediction, 65% accuracy. Remember that selection processes are not perfect because people are complex, making them very hard to measure. Everyone has different strengths and different ways of explaining them, so there's no perfect predictor. These tools exist to try and make the selection process more robust. The more of these techniques that are used, the more confident the employer can be about appointing you, and you can be confident that their robust selection process will place you amongst some great colleagues who will welcome your contribution and empower you to thrive. To prepare for everything I've covered in this video, adopt a positive state of mind and have another read through the job ad, the position description, any company information you've uncovered in your research, and your application. Make yourself as familiar as you can with the organisation and the things they're looking for. Consider the things you don't want to be asked about and prepare some good responses for those. Practice psychometric tests and other activities you think you might be required to complete. Be as relaxed and well rested as you can. A good night's sleep goes a long way. Conversation will come more naturally if you are smiling and relaxed than if you're overly anxious or nervous, so you'll come across more confident and be more interesting to chat to. If they enjoy talking with you, they're more likely to enjoy working with you, and that's what they're trying to decide. They might ask you to switch off your cell phone or leave it outside the room, so an old-fashioned wristwatch or well-charged smartwatch can help you to keep track of time in the absence of a clock on the wall. This enables you to take on the additional role of timekeeper in those group tasks we talked about. Bring any items you would ordinarily need in your day-to-day work. With an interview, we would normally suggest being about 5 to 10 minutes early. Not too early to become awkward, but early enough to feel comfortable in the space and have a last-minute browse of the job ad and your application. For an assessment centre, everyone is expected to be there for a particular start time, so be more like 15 to 20 minutes early, giving you plenty of time to find your way, get familiar with the surroundings, and have a bit of a chat with people over the morning coffee that they've probably provided. This will help you relax into the event rather than rushing in at the last minute and feeling like you have to catch up. If something unexpected happens and you are going to be late, phone them to let them know. Maintain your positive frame of mind throughout the assessments. Practice breathing exercises or other relaxation techniques that have worked for you in the past. Be natural. They want to see who the real you is. If the instructions are unclear, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. If you haven't done that well to start off with, don't stress. It might get better for you when you switch to different exercises later on, and the overall performance might be more important. You might impress them with your resilience when you bounce back and start to perform better. So maintain your composure to give yourself the best chance. In the past, employers have come out with a huge smile on their face, saying it was absolutely fantastic with such a great calibre of candidates that they're going to go back to their manager and see if they can take everyone. The others in the room might be your future colleagues, so treat them accordingly. At the other end of the scale, employers have been disappointed and they didn't really find anybody suitable, so they've decided to go back to market in about 6 months' time. So it's not about competing against the others in the room, but rather you're trying to demonstrate how you meet their criteria or how you can offer a meaningful perspective they might not have considered. Give it heaps. You want to finish with no regrets. These tests are a great opportunity to find out about your strengths and areas for professional development. You might discover some new techniques, approaches, or perspectives from the other candidates. So enjoy the opportunity for learning and growth. Generally, if they go to all the trouble of having you attend an assessment centre, they'll usually give you feedback, either straight away or pretty soon afterwards. If they don't, contact them and ask for it. Do your own self-reflection on what you thought went well and what you might do differently in the future. If you are offered the job, fantastic, congratulations. You now have a choice to make. You don't have to accept. You might have experienced an environment that is at odds with what you need to succeed and thrive. So reflect on how the experience was for you. Did the expectations seem realistic, a little challenging, perhaps due to it being part of recruitment, or did they overdo it on trying to create a pressure environment? Were they polite, pleasant and welcoming, or rude, abrasive and disengaged? Perhaps they did their best to help you shine, or maybe they set you up to fail. Just like the rest of the recruitment process, this is a two-way interaction. So for the personality tests, the best thing you can do is be yourself. For those aptitude and ability tests, the best thing you can do is practice. You can find heaps of practice tests online for free, but many of them will want to charge you for the result or the report they generate. We've got a bunch that you can access for free using your UC username and password, including the results, which will be recorded against your profile so you can review it at your convenience. There's also an interviews and offers program which covers some of the information I've talked about in this video, as well as additional content. And similarly, you can access the Assessment Centre tool to gain extra insight about what you might experience. The links for these are all listed in the description below. We've got heaps of other useful resources to help you with your career development. All of the links I've referred to are listed in the description below. You can collect a copy of your guide to job hunting in the office or access the sections you need online. We have a heap of employer information that you can browse at your convenience. It's usually information about the company or the graduate positions, internships and summer opportunities they might offer. I hope this video has shed some light for you on what to expect from assessment centres and psychometric tests. If you found it helpful, give us a like and share it with someone else who might need it. We welcome your suggestions, questions and feedback, so drop something in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Ka rewhiua.